Good morning, good afternoon, dear colleagues, dear friends, distinguished guests. The topic of my brief presentation is Mission Impossible: Cross-Gendered Shakespeare on Czech Stages after 1989. This presentation was supported by Visegrad Fund project Shakespeare in Central Europe after 1989, Common Heritage and Regional Identity. In my research, I've examined cross-gender dressing and cross-gender casting theories and concepts, including the contemporary ones. In the practical part, I focus on three Czech productions of Romeo and Juliet that were staged in the first decade of the 21st century. Well, let me start with a brief recap of cross-gender dressing and cross-gender casting theory, just in brief. It was commonplace in Shakespeare's time that male actors played the roles of women. However, as Michael Shapiro observes, an all-male physical presence on stage probably questioned the stability of gender roles, generally described as male assertiveness and female submissiveness. Thus, on stage, male actors created a theatrical construct of femininity, which was grounded in the socially constructed femininity from which the conventional perception and understanding of femininity emerged. As Stephen Orgel puts it, boy actors had to be first theatrically translated into women, and subsequently women had to be translated into boys. And here, of course, you can see two other important quotes. The first one by Michael Shapiro and the other one by Judith Butler. And here is my own attempt at visualizing cross-gender casting theory using mathematical symbols. And this is something I'd like to explore in the future as well. But let's go back to the practical part of this presentation and of my research. So the presentation examines three Czech productions of Romeo and Juliet. What links these three productions is the practice of female to male or male to female cross-casting. Whereas Petržalková regendered the roles of the nurse and Prince Aeschylus, Fritsch cross-cast only the role of the nurse, and Nuckols produced Romeo and Juliet with an all-male cast, though, as he emphasized, without any sexual statement. In looking at these three performances, three fundamental questions arise. First, why did the directors apply cross-gender casting? What was the reason behind? Second, how, if at all, did cross-casting undermine the traditional or conventional perception of gender roles in the play? And third, did the character of the enacted figure, of the enacted character, change along with the gender of the actor or actress? Okay, so now let's take a look at the outcome of the practical part. So here is the first production, Romeo and Juliet from 2011. And in the production, the existing theatrical world was redefined and freed from gender stereotypes. Of course, the conventional perception of gender in the play was challenged. The nurse was played by a man, by a large man, and women were assigned a more decisive and aggressive role, whereas men slipped into a less traditional, more caring, and more consensual position. So this is the nurse enacted by Norbert Lichy. And in the role of the nurse, the actor didn't lack warm and protective feelings, understanding, and charisma. Yet the masculine element echoed with a certain cacophony of otherness, making the assumed intimate closeness between the adolescent Juliet and her foster mother less plausible. And of course, this is food for thought, right? But in brief, it should be added that the textual femininity blurred with the physical masculinity, thus creating a very specific gender construct which oscillated between female subordination and male dominance. And here you can see Sylvia Krupanska, who enacted Prince Aeschylus, and here she breaks up the fight between the Capulets and the Montagues, right? So you can see her a typical socialist woman. So this is the second production. So it was staged by the on the At Theatre in Prague. It was staged in Josef Topol's translation. The production had a very poetic subtitle, or It Dawns for the World and It Grows Dark for Us. It shouldn't go without a mention that the text was amended with Holland Topol and the Prima's poems, and the production was imbued with purely contemporary implications. The nurse was enacted by an experienced guest actor, Vladimír Marek, and his nurse was a Zimmerman-like poetic and somewhat comic figure, the impression of whom was strengthened by two large white canvas bags hanging from his neck as a sign of the nurse's femininity and a symbol of breastfeeding. So here you can see the nurse and Juliet. However, Marek's embodiment of the role of the nurse, underscored with falsely saggy female breasts, didn't result, at least in my opinion, in my view, in a drag-like show, but in an attempt to present a male standpoint through his female role. And interestingly enough, Vladimir Marek also enacted the character of Friar Lawrence. And finally, Romeo and Juliet was directed by Philip Nichols. It was an Elizabethan performance which was staged on the Elizabethan stage. It was an all-male performance in which costumes played an increasingly important role. The text of the play was considerably cut, though it was devoid of kitsch or travesty. I've mentioned costumes, so the actors are playing male roles originally wore black suits, white shirts, and black ties. while those enacting female characters, and you can see, for instance, Juliet, were dressed in long black skirts and were stripped to the waist. But this natural and somewhat non-sexual half-nakedness, without the use of outer female attributes, emphasized the importance of the word and its meaning, and encouraged the audience to employ their own imagination. And here you can see Dan Dietrich in the role of the nurse. And likewise, Norbert Lichi, he is also a large actor, so his physique worked with the audience. Well, how to sum up? Well, the theatrical practice of cross-gender casting requires a careful interpretation. It brings a new perspective to well-known plays. Romeo and Juliet is just one example. On one hand, it's new, it's interesting, it's unusual, but on the other hand, it may seem threatening. So, the spectator's imagination is desired to create the final shape of the production, to use, for instance, the constant school of reception aesthetics theory, right? This theatrical practice destabilizes and reconsiders gender. That's the reason why it may seem threatening. It's a novelty. It's still a novelty in the Czech lands. It's still scarce. So, in the future, I'd like to focus on cross-gender performances in the Czech Republic. Well, I've explored only a couple of performances, and it should not go without a mention that. Although the emerging cross-gender performances in the Czech Republic do not necessarily serve to undermine the dominant gender system, they can help facilitate a discussion on gender and gender roles in society. So I'd like to explore this issue in greater detail. And in the Czech Republic, the traditional gender role binary still persists. So, yes, this is something I'd like to focus on, the traditional gender role binary. It still persists despite the official repudiation of gender inequalities, notably through the government strategy and so on. And in the future, I'd like to explore cross-gender performances in Slovakia, in Poland, Hungary, and Romania to see if they share some similarities, or rather if there are differences, because I guess we share, common identity and the same regional position. So that's all from me. Thank you very much for your time, for listening and watching this video. Have a very good day and see you later. So take care and bye bye.